then you're welcome to take them away. If there aren't enough, Alistair will take names and details and send you one later. And Janice, who's in the corner, who is our treasurer, will be able to take the money from you. Because pilots do it. Who is safe for the night? I think you all ought to try and put a hand on it if you can, so you look, pretend like you're getting married. Right, this is it. Look at us, lots of photos.
Where do you want to cut up?
You don't need to cut it, just...
Can't we cut it?
Go on.
You want a piece, do you, Roy?
Just for the photos. Fantastic. Everybody's on a picture? Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You can all go and sit down and relax now.
I'm just going to take you through a little bit of colorised history of Falcon Field. Let's start at the very beginning. Now, how did Falcon Field come about? Well, it was after the Battle of Britain, there was a shortage of pilots. They were building planes like mad, but they didn't have enough trained pilots. They'd lost a fair number during the Battle of Britain, so they realised they needed to train a lot of pilots. It's very difficult to train pilots in Britain, because you had enemy action, you had horrific weather, you had all sorts of reasons why it was very difficult to train, and you couldn't use the airfield that would be used for other purposes. So Winston Churchill, as part of negotiating the Mesa Line Act with America, and Franklin D. Roosevelt requested that America should help to train the pilots. Now, Roosevelt was very much of the opinion that the US was going to have to enter the war on the Allies' side eventually, although at that time there was a very strong opinion in the USA that the USA should remain neutral. It's all happening in Europe, it's nothing to do with them. So it was very difficult to consider that the American public would be happy about training British pilots so they could fight in the war. But he did send his friend General Arnold, who was the Air Force, well, it wasn't the Air Force then, it was the Army Air Force, representative across to Britain to find out what was going on. And of course, when he said, Churchill made sure that when he came across to Britain, that he got VIP treatment. He saw all the top brass of the RAF, he saw all the top brass of the government, he saw the king, so he met everybody, and they all tried to persuade him that Britain should be helped out. So he took this report back to Roosevelt, and Roosevelt sort of agreed. But of course, they were still independent, they were still not in the war at all. This was 1941, early 1941, weren't yet in the war. So they did agree to set up civilian airfields which would train pilots. So how did Falcon Field itself come about? Well, these were the men that started it. Leland Haywood was a falling Hollywood mogul, producer, whatever you like. Not quite like Harvey Weinstein, but you get the idea. And Jack Connolly was a pilot, and they met at a business meeting, and over a dinner, they decided that they, between them, could set up an airline. So they did set up an airline with Hollywood money and the pilot expertise from Jack Connolly. They set up Southwest Airways. Now, Southwest Airways had never existed before, and this was a new venture. And then Squadron Leader Mills, he was sent to US 8 by Churchill to scout out possible sites for airfields. And one of those that was suggested to him was at Mesa. Now, the original site he looked at, Mesa, wasn't suitable, but they eventually decided on a site where Falcon Field is now. And there's two versions of how it gets called Falcon Field. One is that Stuart Mills insisted it should be named after a British bird, The other is that there was a competition run in Mesa, and a guy came up with the name Falcon Field. Both of these stories have got in common is that it was considered to be more of a British bird than Thunderbird. Thunderbird was an American idea, and Southwest Airways had already set up a Thunderbird field to train American pilots. In fact, they set up 2, Thunderbird number 1, Thunderbird number 2, and they weren't going to call it Thunderbird number 3 until they decided they couldn't have that for the British, and they would make it Falcon Field instead. Okay, so who put up the money? Well, all of these people, strangely enough, put up the money. Now, who were they all? Jimmy Stewart was a pilot, I'm not going back to anything else. He was a pretty good pilot, and he was also a big film star, one of the biggest of the day. And he happened to be going out at that time with Ginger Rogers, so she became a shareholder as well. And Cary Grant was another, he was in the army, I think. Henry Follendam was also in the US forces. I think he was in the Navy, I can't remember quite. Darryl Zanuck, the movie producer, he was one of the shareholders, and Hoagie Carmichael, one who wrote a lot of the best known songs in America. On the bottom line, we've got Janet Gaynor, who was the wife at that time of somebody, I'm trying to remember who. Margaret Sullivan was the wife of the else. He was the wife of Leland Leland Haywood, the primary mover, and Dorothy Maguire was married. She was another film star. She was married to the John Stokes, who was the treasurer of Southwest Airways. So they were all shareholders. And this is how it first looked in 1941. In fact, this was taken late in 1941. This was about the time that America actually joined the war. And so that changed everything. And there was obviously a big urgency to train pilots once America joined the war. But Churchill insisted that they honour the obligations to train the British pilots. So there's one thing missing from this picture of the airfield. Do you know what it is? Well, there's lots of airplanes there. Swimming pool is correct. There's no swimming pool at this time. When it first opened in 1941, there was no swimming pool. And how the swimming pool came out, you probably all know this, but it was because 20th Century Fox wanted to make a film there, and they couldn't pay the pilots as extras, couldn't pay the cadets as extras, so instead they bought them a swimming pool. This was the film, Thunderbirds, Soldiers of the Air, starring Gene Tierney and Preston Foster and John Sutton. You should all see this film. You can get it on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Or you can find a link to it on our website, our YouTube channel. So, Jane Tierney was considered to be one of the most beautiful actresses in Hollywood at the time. And so, the great thing was she became a friend of Falcon Field. She visited it on a number of occasions and met a lot of the pilots. And in fact, I think one or two of the pilots, when they went to Hollywood, they actually stayed with them. So this was the swimming pool. 20th Century Fox funded the swimming pool, and there's a couple of photos there. The first one is courtesy of Molly Turner, who was one of the married to the Lloyd Turner, who was the navigation officer, IA's navigation officer at Falcon Field. And the other one, I think it's Janice's dad climbing out of the pool fully clothed. They threw the pilots after they'd done the first solo flight into the pool fully closed. They threw them into the swimming pool and fully closed after they'd done their first solo flight. So, here's a little aside here. Here's Leland Haywood and Jack Connolly with the Thunderbird emblem, which was the emblem of Southwest Airways. And the next picture is somebody called Lionel Anderson, who was on course 7. Now, what's the significance there? He wrote, well, he didn't write it, there was somebody who wrote it for him, a book about his history. And Lionel Anderson had a little brother who was too young to join the Air Force, would desperately like to join the Air Force, but he couldn't because he was too young. And he looked up to his brother. His brother was always the one who was the hero. Unfortunately, his brother was killed towards the end of the war. So Lionel Anderson didn't survive the war, but Jerry Anderson, who was his brother, always looked up to him and was impressed by the name Thunderbirds and used it in order to create a puppet show or a television show or whatever that went into films and television, and he produced a number of things. That was his first one, was Thunderbirds Are Go, and that's the connection with Falcon Field. Okay, so the Cadets Lounge, a couple of well-known photographs there. I've colorised them, and if anybody's interested in getting Falcon Field photos colorised, then I'm the guy to see. Right, so they had a decent, I mean, they built a decent place. That fireplace, of course, is still there. It's the only thing that's still there from that accommodation lounge. I think actually some of the accommodation lounges were taken up and moved somewhere else and used for some other purpose. And of course, they were very lucky in being able to get, we've all mentioned about the food. They got great food, and not just great food inside the camp, but outside the camp, of course. They got fruit that they could never have got at home. And Janice's dad wrote home about, to his girlfriend, about something called, what do you call it? Banana split, yes. Banana split and all the things that went into that, all of the ingredients of which you could not get in Britain. So I don't know what you thought of that letter. But anyway, that's one of his mates eating a banana. You couldn't get in Britain. Banana boats didn't go. Now, they got a lot of fitness and training at Falcon Field, and they also played a lot of sports. They got physical training every morning, so they got very fit, as well as a good diet, they got very fit. And they also played a lot of other sports at Falcon Field, and these things are taken from one of the old magazines, and the descriptions of the sports they played at Falcon Field, and they're actually hilarious if you get to read these descriptions of the sports. For example, they're amazed that rugby, football, there's no breaks. They just carry on. They don't stop to play for anything. And cricket, of course, is never understood by the Americans. And they were amazed that a sport could actually last all day. And of course, they played soccer, football. That was quite popular. I mean, the posh ones played rugby, and the working class cadets played football or soccer. And they got quite good at it, I think. Well, actually, I think they had a rugby demonstration at one of the local grounds in Tempe, or the Arizona State University, as it became. They had a demonstration of a rugby match there, Scotland against England. And I won't tell you who won. But it was England. Of course, Bill McKenna was a Scot, so he was rooting for the Scots. They weren't allowed to shoot from the planes. And think about it, you could not shoot from the planes, especially in a neutral country, or even after they entered the war. You couldn't go around shooting from planes, so they weren't able to get any target practice except by clay pigeon shooting. It was the only kind of shooting they were allowed to do. But this is supposed to train them to shoot. Planes later didn't really work very well. They also had, so when they came back to Britain, they had to be trained to shoot from aircraft. to Falcon Field. Mary Hardwick, she was a British tennis player who became a professional and was on tour in the United States with her husband, who was also a professional tennis player. And she gave a demonstration at Falcon Field, and she played against the Arizona men's champion and beat him, I think. So that was a very popular event because the cadets didn't get much chance to see lady tennis players. So Janice's father took lots of photos, but he only took photos of her, none of her opponent. Right. So other visitors to Falcon Field. These are two of the most significant that happened while Janice's father was there. Teddy Donaldson was RAF Top Gun. He wrote a book called Top Gun. He was the top gun in the RAF. He wrote the gunnery manual for the RAF, which was also adopted by the Americans, air-to-air gunnery. And he gave a flying demonstration at Falcon Field. And another person who gave a flying demonstration at Falcon Field is Squadron Leader James McLaughlin, who was notable for only having one arm. He had been involved in the defence of Malta. Getting there was quite a problem. Most of the pilots that were flown to Malta didn't make it there. They crashed into the sea. And he made it there, and he was involved in the defence of Malta, but their planes were out. I think they had some Hurricanes, and they were outclassed by the latest ME-109s, and he was shot down, and he lost his arm. 6 weeks later, he was back flying. And he became one of the notable aces of the RAF, and he had a notable number of kills to his credit, and he was sent on a tour of the United States and gave flying demonstrations, and they were amazed that somebody with one arm could fly as well as he did. He was